guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is known as the farmhouse puppy murders, and it is where 82-year-old John Lowe committed a double murder inside of his own home. This was a suggested case by Ian, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions you guys have, and of course if you have any more, please let me know and I will look into them for you. So John Lowe lived in this farm in Tilford in Surrey in the UK, and it was known as Keeper's Cottage Stud, and it was this puppy breeding farm amongst other things, but mainly that. John was a notorious backyard breeder. He was pretty well known for his abuse to animals, having previously been investigated by like animal cruelty activist groups and things like that, and he was actually investigated by Watchdog at one point too. He was known for the cruel, horrible thing which is puppy farming. You know, a lot of people you probably already know that puppy farms mainly are horrendous. They're all inbred, kept in tiny cages. Not all of them inbred, but the conditions that they live in are horrendous, and a lot of puppies die because they have like these breeding defects and things like that. It's awful. It is truly awful, but he was involved in that, and he was well known for his overbreeding of dogs too. Due to horrible conditions, as I said, a lot of his dogs did die, and in 2004 he was actually his dog breeding license, so he did have a license for it initially, but that was taken away from him in 2004. He was also involved with stolen dogs somehow. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but apparently when the police searched like his home, they found this stolen dog that was from Essex, and it had been stolen 18 months previous. So again, don't know like whether somebody stole it and sold it to him or stole it for him. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but he did have this stolen dog. Apparently he didn't only have dogs on the farm. He had pigs, he had horses, and he had monkeys too, which I don't know where that even fits in there, but yeah, he had monkeys too. He also owned a lot of guns, like particularly shotguns. Apparently he had been handling them since the age of 7. He did have a shotgun license, so you know they were legal at the time, but he was surrounded by guns, and a lot of farmers do have guns and things to protect their livestock and things like that, because they shoot dogs and things that attack them. John was actually married to a woman called Susanna Wilson, and he ended up meeting another woman named Christine Lee when she came over to buy a puppy for one of her daughters. She had 2 daughters, one was called Lucy and one was called Stacey. Now, I believe Stacey, who was 12 at the time, this was in 1986, I believe the puppy was primarily for her, but obviously I assume that, you know, Lucy would have adored it as well. So anyway, she goes round and she meets John, and they spark up pretty much instantly this kind of unconventional relationship. It ended up being this strange relationship between everyone, because Christine ended up moving into the farm with the 2 daughters, and Susanna, very well known as Sue, who I was going to refer to her as, lived there too. So I don't know whether John in the relationship sense was cheating on Sue or not. I don't know. I don't get it. It was strange. It's strange, but they kind of became this one big happy family. The girls saw the pair as the kind of second parents. They saw Sue as the second mother. They saw John like a father figure, because their father apparently, you know, was not a very nice man, and John was so much nicer to him. He was quite funny, he was lovable, and he was just really nice to him, and so they did see him as a father figure. I'm not really sure of the circumstances surrounding that, but after a period of time, Christine did leave the household with her girls. I don't know what happened, I don't know why, but she did end up leaving. By 2012, Christine was living in Aldershot with her husband, and by chance she ended up kind of bumping into John again. I believe this was like 12 years later, and again, they saw him as family. He needed help. He was obviously getting older and he needed help, and so did Sue. And so her daughters that adored the family, you know, they saw him as their second parents, as well as Christine. They decided that they would go up to the house to help out. You know, he had all these dogs and things. He was getting older, he had a farm, and so he couldn't look after his wife, himself, and the farm all. He just needed help, and so they went to help him. Stacey went on to say that, John was like a dad to her, and Sue was like a second mom, so her motivation in her eyes was to help out her parents. And again, I presume Lucy's thoughts were along the same lines, because she thought of him as a dad too, so she went up to help her. They all went up to help her. They were all there quite a lot. And again, they were helping to care for the dogs that lived there, who were living in these horrible conditions. In March of 2013, unfortunately, Sue actually passed away, and it was said that something in John snapped that day. As soon as he lost his wife, something just went wrong, and he seemed to flip, because Stacey remembers that just days after she unfortunately passed away, Stacey was in the kitchen and John comes in to the kitchen with a shotgun. He told her, if you don't fuck off out of it, I'm gonna blow you up. And then he points a shotgun kind of directly to her chest at like point blank range. She absolutely panics like anyone would. She runs out there, runs out for her life. She's legging it, and she obviously calls the police. She was scared. She thought that he was gonna kill her. He actually threatened to kill her if she didn't get out there, so she did. Police raided his farm that day, and they took away all of his guns and all of his ammunition. Obviously, you can't go around threatening people with it, so it was all taken away from him. After these were taken, Stacey made quite a few complaints about how threatening and aggressive John was being to the police. She gave 2 statements, detailing how dangerous he was. And in total, they were aware of, I believe, 156 incidents of aggression, but apparently they did nothing about them. I mean, at this point, yes, he was being aggressive and things, but he didn't have his weapons, so I don't know, in their eyes, maybe he was harmless. A week after Stacey had literally ran out of the house for her life, John convinces her to come back. And again, she cares for him. She cares for the 52 dogs that he has living in squalor on his farm. And it was very much said that, without their help, he wouldn't have been able to survive. But each time he went up, he would threaten her for trespassing. He would say horrible things to her. He would literally threaten her in front of the police, who basically just said, oh, don't worry about it. He's like this frail old man and who couldn't hurt a fly. He now doesn't have any weapons, so just don't worry about it. Yeah, okay. As far as she was concerned though, his guns had been taken away from him. The police basically said that he wasn't going to get them back, which damn right, because he's threatening people with them. He should not get his guns back. But let me tell you, that wasn't the case, because after this review was done on John and his license and his guns, they were given back to him in July of 2013. Yeah, they were given back to him. I don't know who made that decision. I don't know why they made that decision, but let me tell you, it was the wrong one. In autumn of 2013, Christine decided to move back in with John. I guess he needed a lot more help, and so it just would have been easier if she was just there. She was 66 years old at the time. He was 82, and she was described as like his on and off girlfriend. He wasn't a very well man. He was malnourished. He was very frail, and he wasn't really good mentally or physically, I guess since Sue's death. He totally depended on the women's help. And without that, he probably wouldn't have survived long on his own. Lucy, who was 40 at the time, she would often go around. Stacey would go around. Christine pretty much lived there for a while. Lucy's partner, Matthew Richardson, said that all 3 women actually went around like 4 times a week, like 4 days a week. So they were there, they were helping, and, all they wanted to do was help this father figure of theirs. Then things begin to turn sour. On Sunday, the 23rd of February in 2014, Christine visited the farm with Lucy because she was going to pick up her belongings, because she decided that she was actually going to move out. I don't know the reasoning behind it, whether he was still giving all the threats. Probably was, because I don't see why he would stop. I don't know the reason behind it. Again, at this point, he had his guns back, so it's scary. He's threatening you, and he has the access to weapons, so yeah, I don't blame her for wanting to get out. Lucy rings Matthew, and she tells him that John is actually trying to get the keys to his gun cupboard, and Lucy doesn't think that it is a good idea, whilst Lucy and her mother are actually there. And so Matthew says that Lucy sounded a bit worried. He could hear John in the background, who sounded, I don't know, slightly odd, but not over the top, like he wasn't going mental or anything like that. And so he arranged with Lucy that he was going to go and pick him up at 3 o'clock. Shortly after that, after putting the phone down, John gets access to his gun cabinet. He gets a shotgun. he walks through the house loaded with the intention to go outside and shoot some dogs. After there had been like this argument about feeding them or something. I guess he argued a lot of the animals because they cared for him and he just seemingly didn't. What he did instead though was go through the house with his loaded shotgun. He then goes into the living room where Christine is cowering for her life on the floor, and he shoots Christine at almost point blank range. He then walks away and leaves her bleeding to death in the living room. Lucy runs out of the house and she calls 999.
Right, my mother's just been shot. Keeper's cottage shut. My mother's just been shot. Keeper's cottage shut. Please get here.
Okay, all right.
I'm going to go back to sleep. Bye.
All right, it's freezing.
Shit, I'm running in and out of the house. I don't know if he's going to shoot me.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm going to be alive if I go back in there.
She then ran back in the house to see if her mother was still alive, to see if that she could help her in any way, which is an amazingly brave thing to do. He has a gun. He has literally just shot your mum. The courage it must have taken to run back in that house, knowing that you're probably going to lose your life too, it's just profound. But it's not exactly known fully what happened next. It's suggested that Lucy was shot in the back of the head in the utility room because they actually found her blood in there, that she survived that, she managed to stumble out outside the back of the house, and then she collapsed on the steps around the back of the house. What we do know though is that John shot her from behind at a distance of around 9 feet. So of course the police have received this 999 call. They know that there's, he's shooting people, and so they and police go around and they find outside of the house immediately like this dead guard dog. Inside they found another 3 bodies of dogs, as well as the bodies of Lucy and Christine. John showed no remorse whatsoever for killing these 2 women. He basically said to the arresting officer that they've been giving me shit for weeks, that they deserved to be put down, it was about time. He claimed that the women were supposed to be there to help him, but in fact they were starving him, not allowing him to have any food, not allowing him to have any money. He literally had to beg, apparently, for petrol money. And he basically said that he was glad that they were out of his life and that he wasn't sorry. Of course, he was arrested, but he would later try and change his story, which is just kind of remarkable really, because he literally, I'm not sorry, I killed them, yeah, don't care. But then as soon as it gets to, oh gosh, I might be in trouble here, he basically said that he went to go outside to take care of some dogs. Christine didn't want him to shoot them. Christine didn't want him to, so she's tussling with him with the gun, and the shotgun accidentally went off. But then what with Lucy? It accidentally went off another time, 2 times with Lucy. So it accidentally went off 3 times in total. Okay, John. He claimed that it was a faulty safety catch as well as a sensitive trigger. Even though before he's telling officers that they needed to be put down, and he just didn't care that he'd killed them. So yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense really. But anyway, just in case there was any shadow of a doubt, which there wasn't, they obviously tested the shotgun. They brought in like a specialist and they tested the shotgun, who said that no, this was a purposeful act because you physically had to pull down the trigger with your finger. You physically had to move your finger to pull the trigger to shoot the gun. So it wasn't no accident, which everyone knew, to be honest, but obviously they have to look into it. John Lowe was convicted of the murder of Christine and Lucy on the 29th of October in 2014, and he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 25 years, which basically accounted to him dying in prison, because at this point he's like 82, so that would make him like 107, and obviously he's probably not going to live that long. So this man was basically going to die in prison for his crimes. The police commission did these 2 independent reports into why John got his guns back, and they basically deemed that the decision was flawed and that it didn't meet national standards. And they have spoken to the victim's family and apologised for that. They also said that steps have been added to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. Again, I just didn't understand why he got his guns back. So they admitted that it was a mistake, but it's just really tragic that that mistake ended up with 2 people losing their lives. On the 4th of August in 2018, John Lowe passed away in prison, serving 4 years into his life sentence. So yeah, this case was really tragic. This man was seen as a family member. They looked up to him, they adored him, and he got his guns back after behaving so violently towards them. And then he used one of those guns to kill 2 women and 4 dogs. And just the way he spoke about them was so horrific. Like they were animals. Like, I wouldn't even talk about animals in that way. Like pets needing to be put down. He's talking about people. They were human beings, and he is saying that they needed to be put down. It's just awful, and it's just horrific and so disrespectful. John took away Stacey's family. He took away Christine and Lucy's life. And Stacey was so lucky that she wasn't there, because he probably would have taken hers too. Stacey sees Lucy as her hero. She sees her as having saved her life. So, you know, your sister and your mum are at the house moving out. You know, luckily she wasn't there. But if you haven't heard of them for a while and you didn't know anything had happened or whatever, you're going to go to that house to check out where they were. And then John probably would have killed her too. Lucy's brave actions of running outside of that house and then calling 999 probably did save Stacey, because it allowed the police to come and obviously arrest John. Unfortunately, it was too late for Lucy and Christine at that point. But she really does see her as a hero, and Lucy was a hero. She ran back in there, seeing if she could help her mother, and it ended up with her losing her life too. And it's just awful, but she was like so brave to do that. My heart truly goes out to the family, and it's just tragic turn of events that actually happened. But yeah, that is the end of the case. Give me a big thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video, and subscribe to my channel for any similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of John Lowe and the farmhouse puppy murders. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!